Hi, and welcome to my wonderful Knitting Life YouTube channel. My name is Margaret, and today I'm going to do a video tutorial about the Latvian braid. I'm going to try to make this a little simpler. I recently made the August hat, and I also made a cowl to go with it for my sister. And I found the wrapping of the yarns for the Latvian braid a little tricky, and I ended up, the first time I did it, heading in the wrong direction because I wasn't really sure how to read my knitting. So I'm here today to try to make this easy for you, and hopefully you will enjoy using this as a technique in your knits. It's a fantastic decorative stitch that you can put on hats, you can put on socks, sweaters, anything that you have a mind to put it to. So the August hat was a good place to start for my first Latvian braid experience. This is a free pattern on Ravelry, so if you're interested in giving this a try, you can. It uses worsted weight yarn, and this is the hat that is in my thumbnail for this video. All right, without further ado, let's get started. For this tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate the Latvian braid on a cowl that I have just started to make. I am using 4mm needles for this, and I am knitting with 𝐓𝐿𝐼 garn. My needles are 𝐶𝐤𝐿, and one of the things I like to do when I am making any kind of color work, item in the round, or even just working in the round, is to mark the beginning of my round with a white stitch marker. I always use white for the beginning of the round so I don't confuse myself. These little stitch markers are in my Amazon store, which is marked below if you are interested. So I have started with corrugated rib here, and I've done a couple of rounds of plain knitting to separate the Latvian braid from the rest of my decorative stitching. The Latvian braid is made up of 3 rounds of knitting. And just to remind you, this is a video about knitting Latvian braid in the round. The first round is very simple. All you are going to do is knit one of each of your 2 colors. So I am going to start with the cream. That will be my first color. And then I will do a blue, and I will continue knitting one of each for the entire round. One thing also to pay attention to is that because we are doing one of each, you will need an even number of stitches in order to complete this Latvian braid in the round. I'm going to continue going around this first part of the Latvian braid, and I will meet you back when I have finished the one of each color. Okay, so I'm back at the beginning of my round. I've come back to my white stitch marker, and I have knit the whole way around, alternating my colors, going from the gray to the blue, and I've come back to the beginning and ended with a blue, and you can see here I'm going to start with a gray. So I am positive I have an even number of stitches. So here we have a traditional description of a Latvian braid instructions. You can see there's the 3 rounds, and round 2 tells me to bring both yarns to the front, which I will do now. Put those at the front of my knitting. And from this point on, we're going to be purling. However, traditionally, they are explaining these by bringing yarns over or under. I found that quite difficult to figure out given where my yarns are. So I came up with a method that just made a little more sense to me. So I hope that this is going to help you. The first thing I'm going to do for round 2 is I am going to purl with the same color that I started with. So I am going to purl 1 stitch with my gray. And then what I'm going to do is think about rotating my yarns clockwise or counterclockwise. And I'm going to be kind of winding them around constantly in a clockwise direction. And what I'm also going to find is that my yarn is going to become extremely twisted. So the first thing I do before I really get going is I unwind my balls of yarn for about a meter or a little bit more, and I just put them on the floor because my yarn is also going to twist itself in round 2. In round 3, it will untwist itself. So there's no need to untwist your yarn as you're working unless it really gets frustrating for you. So I'm going to drop those 2 on the floor and give myself a really good amount of yarn to let it twist as I work. So now I am going to pick up my next color, and that's going to be to the right of the one I just finished with. And I am going to knit a blue stitch. I'm going to drop that down and I'm going to pick up a gray. And as you can see, we're kind of working constantly in this counterclockwise direction. And I'm always coming from this direction with my new one, moving like a counterclockwise clock. Put that one down, pick this one up, wrapping to the left, put it down so that this is still to the right, picking it up, and everything is moving counterclockwise as I work through round 2. Now you might be wondering, what direction is my Latvian braid going to point? And this is the great part of this, is that you can read your knitting if you just take a moment to stop and look at it. If I look at my cream purl stitches, I can see that that yarn that's coming up here and here is on a diagonal moving to the left. So this is going to be a left-leaning or left-pointing Latvian braid. If you want to make one that is going to go the other direction, you would want to start moving your yarn in a clockwise direction. But I'm starting moving counterclockwise, so mine is going to lean to the left. And I will put that in the show notes so that you can double check that when you're working on yours. So again, I'm moving constantly in a counterclockwise direction as I work with my yarn. I'm dropping one, then picking one up that should be lying on the right. They're not crossing, but they're rotating. So I'm going to continue with this round, and I will meet you back here for round 3. I have completed round number 2. And as you can see here, my yarn, my working yarn, is really twisted, and I would say that I've let out about 2 meters of my yarn in order to deal with the twist. So if you've done it right, you will have yarn that has become quite annoying. But don't worry about that because it's now going to untwist itself. I'm at the beginning of my round. I've got my white stitch marker right up here to show me that that's where I am. And we are going to continue with purling. And we are going to be rotating our yarn in a clockwise direction this time because when I did my second round, I went counterclockwise. So as you can see, this is super twisted. So when you first get started, this is going to be a little tricky. But I'm just going to pull that apart. And my main color, my gray, is coming from underneath the blue this time. And I am going to knit that first stitch with all of my twisted yarn that is quite annoying. All right, so now what's going to happen is I am going to be constantly rotating these in the opposite direction. So I'm just going to open this up a little bit so that you can see that a little bit better. So my gray is now going to be moving clockwise to the right, and my blue is coming around clockwise this way and underneath. So I am going to go ahead and purl that stitch. It's going to move over and to the right, and my gray is coming from underneath and rotating clockwise this time. So this is going to go around, and this is coming from under, moving clockwise. And as you go through all of your stitches doing this, you should find that your yarn will be unwinding itself. So it is as simple as that. But I do have to say that you don't really get the full beauty of the Latvian braid until you have gone ahead and knit around after the Latvian braid, because you can see all of these purl bumps kind of poking out. So don't be worried if it doesn't look so beautiful. It will, in the end, impress all of your friends and look like you are a master knitter. Even though it's just been a 3-round technique and looks fantastic to decorate a lot of knits. So I'm going to finish this round, and I think what I'll do is knit a plain, and then you can see what this is going to look like in the end. So I will meet you back here for the final version of this Latvian braid. So I am finished the 3rd round of the Latvian braid, which is essentially the process. And you can see here, although I'm going to have to sort of bend it a little bit, I now have the formation of a Latvian braid that is pointing to the left. And my yarn is pretty much back to the way it should be without all of those twists. Mine proved to be a little extra tricky because it is a rustic yarn, so it is very, very sticky. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out, but before I leave, I'm just going to show you, in order to continue on with your knitting, you're going to want to put those 2 strands in the back before you get going, because we were purling. And in order to see the full effect of that beautiful Latvian braid, I'm just going to knit a couple of stitches here so you can see how wonderful this looks when it's done, and we don't have all of those purl bumps sticking up at us. So let's take a look here. So there we go. We're starting to see that full effect of the Latvian braid. I might even take a couple of rows and soaking and blocking for everything to bloom and get the beautiful final look of this Latvian braid. But it is a gorgeous technique, and I have fallen in love with it, and I've started to put it on a lot of my items, like my cowls, tops of socks after the ribbing, and that sort of thing. So hopefully you found that helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I do have a lot of other content on my knitting channel if that interests you. All right, take care. Thanks for watching.